So the place he had left and went across the lake, and now he's come back again. And now the crowd still wants to see him. The crowd that he had just left the day before. Now, they all come out. They see the boat coming back, right? And they come out of town to see him. So they're there, and he was by the sea. He didn't get any farther than that, right? They let him get off the boat, basically. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came, and when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and alive." So he went with him. Some of you have gone through the pain of having a child die. Some of you have gone through the uncertainty of your kid being so sick that you didn't know if they were going to make it. So you can relate in a way with Jairus that maybe other people in here can't relate with. But this man is an important man. This man is the leader of the synagogue. This is the head Jew in this town. He is an important man. He is the man that other Jewish men, other good, believing people go to and ask his advice. He is the man who gets to say the prayers at the potlucks, right? This guy is the guy. And he hears that Jesus has come back to town. Now, his reaction to that is what a dad would do. Not an important man, not a religious man, not a man who was stuck on his own position in society. What he does is what any good dad would do. My kid's in trouble. There's help. I'm going to go. And when he gets there, he doesn't just say, "Hey, Jesus, I need a favor." He falls on the ground and starts begging, and he doesn't stop begging. That's what repeated means. I need help. This guy's the only thing that I can think of that might help my kid. This is not a man who is normally down in the dirt. This is not a man who would go out to find some, circuit preacher. This is the man. This is the guy in that town who's got the one-way ticket with God. This is who everybody else comes to. But where is he at? He's in the dirt at Jesus' feet begging. What does Jesus tell him? So he went with him. That's it. This guy's begging. Okay, let's go. Jesus goes with him. Now, he's going up to wherever it is Jairus lives, wherever his daughter is, and a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now remember, they were there to see Jesus anyway. This Jairus thing was not part of their agenda. They don't know where Jesus is going, but they're going to follow him, see what happens. Now there was a woman who'd been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She endured much under many physicians and spent all she had, and she was no better, but rather she grew worse. I like that phrase there, suffered much under many physicians. Anybody in here have a chronic problem that you have to go see the doctor about? semi-regular? Do you ever feel like you're suffering under your physician? And you might have insurance, but they didn't have insurance back in the day. There was no Obamacare. It was all self-pay. She spent everything she had. And instead of getting better, she was getting worse. Now, you'd think you quit going to the doctor if they made you worse, wouldn't you? But she kept going until she's out of money, which I think that works that way today, too. Some things are just the same. Now, she had heard about Jesus. She had heard about Jesus. There's this guy who can heal people. She heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. So Jesus is walking along and she pushes her way through so she can reach up there and just touch him. I'm just going to touch him. Just grab his coat. Now, why did she do that? Well, it tells us. For she said to herself, if I but touch his clothes, I will be made well. So that's what she reasoned. Jesus isn't going to talk to me. Jesus isn't going to, I don't need him to do anything else other than I'll touch him. Now, where in Jesus' ministry did he ever say that? He never said that. Where in the Old Testament scripture did it ever say that? It never said that. She just reasoned that his power was so great, that his ability was so tremendous. If she could just touch him, it'd be all right. Now, she came up with that on her own. That's her faith. And so she acted on her faith. She pushed her way through the crowd so she could just touch him. Because she thought, man, my life is so bad. If I can just touch him, it'll make it all better. Totally on her. And what did God do about that? Well, she didn't have book, chapter, and verse. So verse 29 says this. Immediately, her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. She had a faith that she put into action, and God honored it. God honored her belief. God honored her faith. God fixed her problem for her. Now, immediately aware the power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" I just healed somebody. Who'd I heal? Now, I think he probably knew. All right? But he's looking around. Hey, who touched me? Now, his disciples, who are very astute men, right? His disciples said to him, verse 31, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" Jesus, again here, looked all around to see who had done it. He didn't quit. We have this story recorded for us in Scripture because Jesus didn't quit. He did something. It could have been fine. Her life would have been better. She got what she wanted. Her faith made her well. God did what she wanted to have done. She didn't ask to be at the center of attention. We don't even know her name. We just know it's a woman who had this bleeding problem. But Jesus had something he wanted to point out. So he kept looking for her. Now, by the way, if you're Jairus and all this is going on, this is kind of a delay. All right, you got something important, and here this Jesus guy is wanting to know who pushed on him in the crowd. If I was Jairus, I would be a little bit anxious, a little bit, like, hey, I'll touch you. Let me grab your coat. We're going this way. I need you over here. What's this thing in the street? But Jesus stops and he takes care of it. The woman, knowing what had happened to her, like she knew she was healed, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Fear and trembling and fell at the ground. Jewish men, especially Jewish men who were godly men, were not touched by women who weren't their wives. They're pretty strict on that. They have some very strict rules about that in the Middle East, too. You don't see men and women, ladies, your husband doesn't hold your hand in church if you're in the Middle East, right? You might not even have your faiths showing. You might have to be places where it has to be all covered up. You certainly don't touch people you're not married to if you're of the opposite sex. So she comes forward and she is afraid. And why is she afraid? She just got the thing that she wanted. Is she afraid that he's going to take it away? Is she afraid that she wasn't supposed to touch this guy? And now she got what she needed, but she didn't do it the right way. And so now her miracle is going to get, God's going to renege on the miracle? Is she afraid that she violated some social norm that she's supposed to, and now she's going to be humiliated? Is she afraid that she's keeping this very important teacher from doing the stuff he's supposed to do, that God sent him to do? We don't know. She's afraid. She falls down and she starts confessing. But Jesus says to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." I don't know why it was important that Jesus had to stop what he was doing, look around, find this person, have this outburst of emotion, and then tell her it was okay. I don't know why all of that was important, but it was. And it was so important, God had it wrote down for us. I think sometimes we need to remember that it is okay, that your faith is enough, and that God's going to do good stuff for you. Now, I'm up here saying that means that you're going to get a Mercedes-Benz. I'm not preaching that. But I am preaching that when Jesus does something good, it's meant to be for your good. When Jesus provides a miracle, it's because you need a miracle. And when Jesus does something in response to your faith, it's because he wanted to. Nobody made Jesus do this. So this is all going on. Jairus is there trying to get him going. While he was still speaking to the woman, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter's dead." Now, if you're Jairus, there ain't nothing worse than you could hear at this minute. Your daughter's dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? That's a good question. Why bug the man? He's got more important stuff to do. Your kid's dead. Let's just get on with this. But Jesus overhears what they say. Verse 36. Overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear." It occurs to me that most of the time in the Old Testament, when an angel shows up or somebody shows up from God, the words "fear not" get used an awful lot. And here's Jesus. He's showed up. What's he telling them? Do not fear, only believe. I don't know if I could have believed. What am I supposed to believe here, Jesus? Think about it for a minute. You're Jairus. Your kid's so sick that you ran across town, you fell on the ground, you begged this teacher to come. On the way back that he's coming, he's delayed with this silly other thing. I think I'd be angry. I think I'd be upset. You know, if we could have got him there 5 minutes earlier. Now it's all over. And Jesus says, don't be afraid. Just keep believing. Keep believing. Jesus allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. This is his closest three. It's the only three guys he takes with him. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion. People weeping and wailing loudly. When he entered the house, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep?" This is almost as brilliant of a question as who touched me. Why are you crying? Why are you crying? What's the fuss all about? Well, what's all the fuss all about? Now, he says this, and I say dumb stuff. All right? I say dumb stuff all the time. It's natural. If I don't do it this morning, just wait around this afternoon. It'll happen. Okay? But Jesus isn't saying something dumb. He's not saying something because he doesn't understand what's going on. He's saying something because he's got a point that we need to make. He needs to make so we can see it. Why are you crying? What are you making a commotion? The child is not dead, but sleeping. And they laughed at him. Do you think that they knew what dead was? I think they knew what dead was. Do you think that that's what Jairus was so afraid of that he went across town and begged the only hope he had to come help him? This is what Jared feared. This is what Jared was trying to avoid, or Jairus, excuse me. The teacher shows up. Why are you crying? Kid's only asleep. And they laugh. Everything in the experience of the people who were there in that moment, all right, everything in their experience. Remember, the Bible hasn't been, the New Testament hasn't been written yet. There is no way, if this guy was from God, if he would have showed up, maybe he could have prayed, God would have healed the kid. There's no way this guy can do nothing about that now. And if you were there and you hadn't read this, and this wasn't the umpteenth time you've heard this passage preached in church, all right, if you were there that day, you would have thought the same thing I would have, which is like, this guy, somebody ought to shut him up, and why is he saying this stuff? This is just hurtful. I wouldn't have had any more faith in Jesus than those people did. You know why? Because nothing in my experience with dead bodies is ever, I have never had a dead body come back to life. I have never had a deer I shot, an antelope, anything, come back to life. I have never been in a car wreck where someone died, where that person then got up again. I have never been in a hospital room where somebody died and then that person got up again. I've had all those experiences. I have never been in a morgue where a body sat up. And neither have any of you. Why are you crying? Jesus kicks them all out. He puts them all outside. He took the child's father and mother and those who are with him, so Peter, James, John. Jesus takes 5 of them. Mom, Dad, 3 of the disciples. Jesus is the 6th one. And he went into where the child was. So wherever it was that they had her laid out in her room or wherever. He walks in. He takes the little girl by the hand and said to her, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, get up. There's a lot of stuff that I can say, right? Like those words can come out of my mouth. I can say, little girl, get up. This happens sometimes at our house when we need to get a teenage girl out of bed. Actually, what I do in those cases, I don't say it because she won't hear me. I get some peanut butter, I put it on her nose, I let the dogs go and lick it off. It's just good parenting. There's lots of techniques. You can use these if you got daughters and dogs at home too. The fact is, I could never go in and say this to a dead person. Nobody else can either, by the way, except for Jesus. So he goes in and takes this little dead girl's hand and says, get up. Now, for any of the rest of us to do this, this is the cruelest, most heartless thing we can do. Because we don't have God saying, go and tell that little girl, get up. But he does it. And what happens? Does she lay there and kind of moan and start stirring and 20 minutes later she gets up? What does it say happened? Immediately, this little girl gets up and begins to walk around. She's about 12, it tells us. That tells me that she's probably one of these kind of kids who springs around and, if you've ever seen a kid with all the energy they have and wish you could bottle that and get a little of that yourself. She gets up and she's doing this. This is a verse for you. At this, they were overcome with amazement. I don't know if that's strong enough in English. I'd be really interested to know what that really means. I think they'd be like, what? What is this? Nobody's ever seen this before. The only other time this happened in the Bible was Elijah and the widow's child. That's the only other time. Like that's a story that they heard that God did one time, like hundreds of years ago. They're experiencing it today, right now. The little girls. He told them strictly not to tell anybody. That is not usually the way. Okay, so if I was doing this and I could raise people from the dead and heal people and stuff like that, I'd probably want a little credit for it. What does Jesus tell them? Don't tell anybody. I don't want you telling anybody. Don't say anything about this. And by the way, feed the kid. Which is usually, if you got 12 or 13 or 14, feeding them is usually about probably the best thing you can do anyway. So, what do we get from this? What does the story tell us? First of all, it tells us that our faith matters to God. Jairus' faith mattered to Jesus. This guy's in the dirt at Jesus' feet begging him to go, so Jesus goes. There's another person in the story, and her faith matters to Jesus. Her faith is, if I just touch him, it'll be better. So she gets healed, and Jesus stops the procession of going and helping this person because he wants to point out that he helped this person. And that it was her faith that made her well, and he makes sure that he tells her that. Tells her to go in peace. It's your faith that did this. This is great. Go ahead, have a good life. I'm happy to have you have what you wanted, what you needed. Now, we also see him saying something here when Jairus' friends show up and they say, your daughter's dead, don't bug the guy no more. What does Jesus tell him? No, keep believing. This story isn't done yet. Keep believing. I have just as much power right this second as I did when you came out and met me by the seashore. Keep believing. He shows up. Why y'all crying? Now, he knows he's got it. God knows he's got it. God sees the beginning from the end. He knows what's going to happen. He knows how you're going to end up. He knows, kids, who you're going to marry. He knows, he already has got the whole thing. He can see everything that's going to happen from the day of our birth to the day of our death. He already knows. He's not surprised by any of it. He's completely in control. He's completely in control of the situation, just nobody knows it yet. Keep believing. Keep having faith. Okay, guys, you three, mom and dad, you two. Let's go in here. Now, she is absolutely dead. Nobody has any doubt of that. This was not a thing of she slipped and fell and hit her head noggin and, you know, she was a little bit unconscious, maybe had a concussion or something. She's dead. They knew what dead was. They're getting ready to bury her. That's what the commotion's about. They just haven't taken her from the house yet. Mom and Dad, Peter, James, John, come in here. Little girl, get up. It says they were amazed. If that was your little girl, how amazed would you be? One day, there's going to be a resurrection of the dead. I guarantee it, because it's in here. And the same guy who said to that little girl, get up, is going to say to every single faithful person who's ever lived or died, it's time to get up. And he's going to say, give them something to eat, because there's going to be a feast, a wedding feast of the Lamb. You may have read about that in Revelation. And what he did that day with that girl, he's going to do one day for all of us. It's a fact. He's going to do it. He is the only one who can do it. He is the only one who can say, get up. And he can bring us back to life. And he's going to do that one day. And he's going to do it in his timing, just like he did with this little girl. Now, God has not consulted with me about the timing thing. I find this extremely frustrating in my own life on any number of other things too. But his timing is perfect, and his delivery is perfect. And when he asks a question, even though we don't get the question, even his question that he's asking us is perfect. Does that mean I understand it? Nope. Does that mean my reaction to it is always what it should be? It's not. But one day he's going to say to us, get up. And one day, I intend to. I hope you intend to too. That's the point of the gospel. Jesus has the ability to take us from death into life, and he's going to do exactly that. I don't know where you are in your walk with the Lord. I hope you're farther along in a positive way today than you were yesterday or last week. But in a minute here, Max got a song. I want to sing that song. And if you need help with your faith, with your walk, understanding something in Scripture, if there's something holding you back, we got folks here who want to talk to you about it. If you need help with something else, we got folks here that talk with you about it. We'd like to help you. If you want to be a Christian, we'd really like to help you. Max, why don't you come up here and lead us in song, sir?
This next week we can go anywhere with Jesus, number 414. Anywhere with Jesus I can safely go, anywhere he leads me.